Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Pitchsider podcast. It is transfer deadline day, and we're going to take you through all the latest transfers and also do a quick roundup of the Premier League games. But as always, with me is Joseph Keane. How are you, Joe?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Seems odd doing a midweek podcast, but yeah, it's good to be here on deadline day.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shake-up, isn't it? But big news to talk about, I guess, in terms of transfers. But firstly, you're going to take us over the Premier League games that happened midweek.
Yes, so we've had the fifth round of the Premier League fixtures, starting on Tuesday the 30th of August. Crystal Palace Brentford was 1-1. Fulham Brighton was 2-1 to Fulham. Southampton got a surprise win, but deserved win over Chelsea at 2-1. Leeds versus Everton ended in a 1-1 draw. Moving to Wednesday, Arsenal got their fifth consecutive win in a row for 2-1 over Aston Villa. Bournemouth drew against Wolverhampton. Haaland got his second hat-trick in a row in the Premier League as Man City beat Nottingham Forest 6-0. West Ham drew to Tottenham 1-1, and Liverpool beat a Newcastle side after getting a late-minute winner with 2-1.
Now on to the main creme de la creme of the week's podcast. We're here to talk about the transfers that's happened over this window, in particular the transfer deadline day dealings that have occurred. But we're going to go through the major leagues and look at who and what players have been brought in over this particular window period. So we'll start off with Arsenal in the Premier League. They brought in Jesus for £45 million from the likes of Man City. They also brought in Zinchenko as well. They brought in a young Portuguese attacking midfielder called Fabio Vieira from Porto for around £31 million. They've replaced Leno with Matt Turner, the American goalkeeper from New England. And they brought in a promising winger, Marquinhos, from Sao Paulo for £3 million. So quite an interesting deadline day window for Arsenal. Really strengthened their team so far. They let out Guendouzi to Marseille for £9 million. Lucas Torreira went to Galatasaray. As mentioned before, Leno went to Fulham for £3 million. And Mavropanos went to Stuttgart. One of the deadline day deals was Hector Bellerin went to Barcelona on a free transfer. So he's returning to his boyhood club. Lacazette went to Olympique Lyonnais, and Maitland-Niles went to Southampton. Pepe went to Nice on loan. In terms of Aston Villa, Diego Carlos signed for £27 million. He is now injured. Quite a bad injury for a while. He'll be out. Philippe Coutinho joined from Barcelona for £18 million. We're all familiar with that one. On deadline day, they brought in Leander Dendoncker from Wolves for around £15 million. Quite a versatile midfielder who can also fill in at centre-back. Quite a smart move in my eyes. They also brought in Benderek from Southampton, initially a loan, potential for a transfer later down the line. In terms of Bournemouth, they didn't really have much action. The only late signing they brought in was Jack Stevens from Southampton, the centre-back on loan. In terms of Brentford, they've had a busy window so far. Not so much business at the end of the window, but they brought in Keane Lewis Potter, the 21-year-old left winger from Hull, for around £18 million. Of course, Aaron Hickey from Bologna, Damsgaard from Sampdoria, and Trikoshka from Lazio, and probably arguably the best player, Ben Mee, on a free from Burnley. Brighton and Hove, of course, lost Cucurella to Chelsea, but they brought in Pervis Estupiñán, who was a former Watford player. He's a left back, signed from £16 million from Villarreal. They've also strengthened in more younger players for the future. Julio Enciso signed from Libertad, a Paraguayan team, for about £10 million. Place of a second striker, one for the future. And a big exit from Chelsea. Well, big-ish, I guess. Not in terms of height, I guess. Billy Gilmore signs from Chelsea for £9 million. Not a lot of money for quite a promising player. It'll be interesting to see how well Potter could shape him into a player that he wants to be. Chelsea spent arguably the most in the window. maybe alongside Manchester United. They brought in Wesley Fofana for £72 million from Leicester. Cucurella, as mentioned, from Brighton for around £60 million. Raheem Sterling from Man City, £50 million. Koulibaly from Napoli for £35 million. He hasn't had the best start in the Premier League to his Premier League career. Chukwuemeka, signed from Aston Villa for £15 million. He's quite a promising 18-year-old central midfielder. Aubameyang on deadline day from Barcelona for £10 million. I saw Marcos Alonso going in the opposite direction. They've also, of course, bought Gabriel Solonia, the Chicago native goalkeeper, who's loaned back for the rest of the season. And another deadline deal was Dennis Zakaria, the Swiss defensive midfielder that's quite a promising player. Around 3 to 5 million loan fee with an option to buy for 30 million. Could see him being bought at the end of his contract. They also let out Timo Werner to Leipzig for around 20 million euros, rising to 25, which is a 50% loss on what they bought him for. Emerson went to West Ham for 13, and Lukaku, of course, went back on loan to Inter Milan for around £8 million loan fee. Palace bought in Cheick Doucouré, a Malayan defensive midfielder who looks very promising from Lens for £20 million. Chris Richards, the American centre-back from Bayern Munich for £10 million. Sam Johnson on a free transfer from West Brom. And Malcolm Ebiowei, the winger from Derby, also on a free transfer. They let go of Christian Benteke, who went on a free transfer to DC United. Maybe there's a small fee paid for him, but not too much. Everton spent big, 31 million on Amadou Onana, the lanky Belgian defensive midfielder. Looks like an interesting player. Dwight McNeil joined from Burnley for 20 million. One late move was Neil Maupay from Brighton, £10 million. James Garner from Manchester United, £10 to £15 million, which is quite a low fee for such a player of high potential. And Idrissa Gueye rejoined Everton from PSG for around £5 million. Early in the window, they brought in Tarkowski, Ruben Vinagre, Connor Cody. That was about it, to be honest. I guess the biggest exit was Charlton for £50 million. In terms of Fulham, they signed in Yao Polinia for £18 million from Sporting Lisbon. Issa Diop from West Ham, £16 million. Andres Pereira, £8 million from Manchester United. Kevin Babu from Wolfsburg, £5 million. Deadline day signing was Carlos Vinicius, formerly on loan at Tottenham. They bought him from Benfica for about £4.5 million. Quite a decent backup for Mitrovic. William, the former Chelsea and Arsenal winger, has signed on a free transfer from Corinthians, where he had one goal in 45 games for the Brazilian club. So it'll be interesting to see how well he can do if he at all starts. Kazawa has joined from PSG on a loan transfer with an option to buy. A deadline day signing was Daniel James, loaned out from Leeds, I believe, with an option to buy as well. In terms of people they let go, I guess the biggest probably Fabio Carvalho, who went to Liverpool for £5 million. He's the guy who scored in the last game against Newcastle. Leeds United had an interesting window in general. Had two massive people leaving. Rafinha and Calvin Phillips both left for about 100 million in total. So Leeds responded by buying Aronson from Salzburg for 30 million, Sinistera from Feyenoord for 22, Tyler Adams from Leipzig for 15, Rasmus Christensen from Salzburg for 10, Mark Rocker from Bayern for 10. Late in the window, they bought Wilfred Nyota, an Italian second striker from Zurich. Quite an interesting play. Got into the Italy squad quite recently, so maybe one to watch out for. Leicester City have done basically fuck all this window, apart from let go Kasper Schmeichel on a free to Nice, Fofana on the big transfer to Chelsea, 72 million, and they replaced him with Wout Faes, a Belgian David Luiz lookalike centre back from Stade Rennes for £15 million. Liverpool in this window brought in Darwin Núñez for 70 million. As mentioned earlier, Carvalho from Fulham, Calvin Ramsey, and a deadline day signing in Artur Melo from Juventus on loan. This not the most inspiring of signings. I know they needed to shore up their midfield, but Artur Melo is not a player who's been in good form recently or much loved by any club he's been at. He's been tried to, Barcelona and Juventus have both tried to get rid of him. So, I guess that says it all. Of course, they let go of Sadio Mane, which was huge for them. Neco Williams also brought in a lot of money for them, selling to Forest for 18 million. Man City, of course, brought in Erling Haaland and Calvin Phillips. Haaland cost about 55 million plus, I imagine, the same amount in agent fees. Phillips joined from Leeds for 44. Originally deadline day, nearest deadline day was at Kanji, signed for 15 million from Borussia Dortmund. This guy's good at maths, by the way. That's his sort of hidden talent. They also brought in a left back, Sergio Gomez from Anderlecht, the Spanish player used to play for Dortmund back in the day, where he used to play more of a attacking midfielder. So as his career's progressed, he's only 21. He's been pushed back into the left back position, but seems to be doing quite well there. They let a lot of players go. They received about £140 million in income from the likes of Sterling, Jesus, and Zinchenko, all big sales. Manchester United spent big at the end of the window buying Anthony from Ajax for 85 million. Casemiro was a bit of a shock signing for about 60 million euros. Lisandro Martinez was another signing from Ajax for about 50 million. And Tyrell Malacia from Feyenoord for 13. And of course, Eriksen on a free, and Martin Dubravka, a late signing on loan with an option to buy from Newcastle. In terms of outgoings, Andres Pereira, as mentioned, went to Fulham, and Eric Bailly went on loan to Marseille with an option to buy. Newcastle bought in a big Swedish striker, Alexander Isak, from Real Sociedad, £63 million. Scored on his debut against Liverpool, almost got a second, but unfortunately was offside. Also brought in Sven Botman from Lille, £33 million. No major outgoings. Federico Fernandez went on a free to Elche, but nothing that they can't cope with. Now on to the big one, Nottingham Forest. I'll rattle through these quickly because there's a few of them. Morgan Gibbs-White, 25 million from Wolves. Taiwo Awoniyi, 18 million from Union Berlin. Neco Williams from Liverpool, 18 million. Emmanuel Dennis, 13 million from Watford. Oriol Mangala, 11 million from Stuttgart. Julien Biancon, 9 million from Troyes. Moussa Niakite, 9 million from Mainz. Lewis and Bryan, 8 million from Huddersfield. Remo Freuler, 8 million from Atalanta. Omar Richards, 8 million from Bayern Munich. Renan Lodi, £5 million loan fee from Atletico Madrid. Yuja Wang, £3 million from Bordeaux. He's been loaned out to Olympiacos, who's also owned by the same owner. Willy Bolly, £3 million from Wolves. Harry Toffolo, £3 million from Huddersfield. Josh Bowler, £2 million from Blackpool, also been loaned out to Olympiacos. They've spent £145 million. Southampton have invested in youth this window. Gavin Bazunu, who's joined from Man City for £12 million. Romeo Lavia, who had a great game against Chelsea, signed from City under 21 side also for around £11 million. They've also brought in Samuel Adouzi from Man City, a 19-year-old winger. They brought in Sekou Mara from Bordeaux from £11 million, a 19-year-old striker. A big signing, I guess, is Coletta Carr, an international Croatian centre-back from Marseille for £9 million. And a player who's impressed me so far is Bela Chotchap, a German centre-back from Bochum, £9 million. And Joe Aribo from Rangers for £7 million. Quite a good investment for about £60 million in total of their signings, and all quite young, to be honest. I think the average age is probably about 21. In terms of outgoings, they let go Fraser Foster from a free. That was about it, to be honest. Tottenham bought in Richarlison from Everton, 50 million. Christian Romero from Atalanta, 50 million as well. Yves Bissouma, Brighton, 30 million. Destiny Ugogi, 15 million from Udinese. He's been loaned back. The Italian left back. Jed Spence from Middlesbrough, 15 million. They also brought in Perisic on a free, Longley on a loan. They got rid of Steven Bergwijn, 30 million to Ajax, quite a good fee for him. Undebele has gone to Napoli on loan. In terms of West Ham, Lucas Paqueta was a late signing from Lyon, 40 million euros. The Brazilian attacking midfielder, quite an interesting player. Gianluca Scamacca joined from Sassuolo for 30 million. Naïef Aguerd, Moroccan centre-back, joined from Stade Rennais for 31 million. Maxwell Cornet joined from Burnley for about 18. Emerson, of course, joined from Chelsea for 15 million. They also signed a German centre-back from PSG, Thilo Kehrer, for 10 million. Flynn Downs from Swansea for 10. Areola from PSG for about 8. In terms of outgoings, Issa Diop went to Fulham for 16 million. Yarmolenko went to the Middle East on a free transfer. Wolverhampton brought in quite a decent player with high potential, Mateus Nunes for £40 million from Sporting. Gonzalo Guedes from Valencia, 30 million. Nathan Collins for 20 million from Burnley, and a late signing in Kalasiak, a 6'7" striker from Stuttgart, £15 million. Of course, they let go of Gibbs White for about £30 million. So quite a good deal to bring in Nunes for not too much more than that amount. So that wraps up the Premier League major signings. Joe, what do you think who had the best transfer window out of those lot?
I think it's going to be difficult to tell, but at the moment, I think Arsenal have done well. They're a very good team. I think City have had the best window, as per the piece on the Pitch Sider. I think City have signed well. They signed when they needed. They've let go a few players, and they still look like they are the beast they were last season, if not better. It'd be interesting to see how Chelsea do, to see how they will deal with all their new signings. And at the moment, they're in a bit of a rut, obviously with transfers. Liverpool, I think, needed to sign a few more players. But yeah, I'm going to go for City, as they've had the best window.
Yeah, good shout. I'll probably say the same. Big question marks about Nottingham Forest. 21 signings. They only made it to 22 with Batshuayi, who went to Fenerbahce on loan. But yeah, be interesting if they can sort of sculpt their team into, I guess, a team rather than individuals. So ones to watch out for.
Who do you think's had the worst transfer window? Which team?
Unequivocally, I'd say Leicester. They didn't do any business until at the very end, and they let go of Fofana. Although they got in a lot of money for him, they only replaced him with Face, who is unproven. He played in France. He's quite promising, but yeah, they've got a lot of holes in their squad, and I think they might struggle this year in the Premier League. Yeah, go for it.
So my final question for the Prem is, who is your player to watch from who's been transferred?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I like Wilfred Gnotto, the Italian. He's 18 years old. He was released by Inter Milan 2 years ago, I believe, and went to Switzerland. And this year he got into the Italian squad. 4 goals, 4 games, 1 goal. Quite a raw player still, only 18. Signed for Leeds for about £4 million, which is quite a good signing. I don't know how much game time he will get straight away, but going forwards into the future, you want to keep an eye on, I think, for sure. Interesting player. So we're going to have a quick look at the other major leagues in Europe. I'm going to take a quick look at the major teams as well. So we're going to look at Real Madrid first. Of course, they brought in Tchouaméni for £72 million. Rudiger on a free from Chelsea. They let go of Casemiro, and Bale went to LAFC. Isco as well went to Sevilla. Barcelona had a big window. They bought in Rafinha from Leeds for 52 million. Jules Koundé from Sevilla, 45. Robert Lewandowski from Bayern for 40 million. Marcos Alonso, Bellerin, Christensen, Kesse, So quite a big window for them. They did let go of Coutinho, Aubameyang, Oscar Mingueza. Braithwaite went on a deadline day deal to Spaniel. Neto as well, the goalkeeper, went to Bournemouth. And Titi went on loan, I believe, to Lecce. Atletico Madrid didn't really have a huge window. They brought in Reguilon from Spurs on loan. Early in the window, they brought in Nahuel Molina, the Argentinian right back from Udinese, for about 20 million. But apart from that, it's probably the major dealings in La Liga. If we take a quick look at Syria, AC Milan brought in Charles de Ketelaere from Club Bruges for £30 million, the lanky striker. This to be an interesting player. They also brought in a central midfielder from Belgium, Ranks, that's how you pronounce it, from Wolfsburg for £2 million loan fee with an option to buy for £15 million. They let go a few players as well, namely Alessio Romagnoli, who was formerly captain of AC Milan, on a free to Lazio, and Kessie as well to Barcelona. Inter Milan, they purchased after loaning in Joaquin Correa from Lazio. Obviously, we know he was a 27-year-old Argentinian second striker, 20 million or so. Lukaku as well came in. They didn't really see two major exits, apart from maybe Vidal, who went on a free to Flamengo, Sanchez to Marseille on a free, and Perisic. So they let a few of the old guard go on a free transfers. Napoli replaced Koulibaly with Min Jae Kim from Fenerbahce, the South Korean centre back. Cost about 15 million. He's quite highly rated, so one to watch out for. And Guisa joined from Fulham for about 15 million. And the Georgian winger from Dino Batumi, I cannot pronounce this guy's name, but I'll give it a go. Kvichka Kvaratskhelia. That's quite good, actually. They also brought in Raspadori on a loan with obligation to buy from Sassuolo, quite an interesting player, 22 years old. Italian international. Giovanni Simeone, Simeone's son, also came from Hellas Verona to provide backup for Simonen up front. Juventus brought in Bremer from Torino, their local rivals, for £36 million. Chiesa finally signed after being on loan, 36 million. And an interesting deal was Kostic, came from Frankfurt for £10 million. Di Maria also joined, and so did Milik from Marseille. Quite a small fee actually paid for Milik. I think it was about 1 million with a later obligation of about 10 million, so quite a good deal. Roma, they brought in Dybala, Belotti, Matic, and Wijnaldum, who's now in a wheelchair. So that wraps Italy up. Now, I want to go to Ligue 1 now, to the Spanish. Wow, let me start again. I want to go to Ligue 1 now, to the French capital, because I think PSG had a phenomenal window. They brought in Vitinha, a central midfielder from Porto, for about £14 million. He's 22 years old and looks highly promising. Nuno Mendes, of course, had him on loan prior, the left back, finally signed for 35 million. Fabian Ruiz signed from Napoli for 20 million pounds, Spanish midfielder. They also brought in another Spanish midfielder in Carlos Soler from Valencia for about 15 million. He was linked to United a few years ago for about 60. They brought in Nordin Michele from Leipzig for 10 million, and Hugo Ekitike from Stade Rennais on a loan with an obligation to buy. He was, of course, linked to Newcastle earlier on in the window. So quite a big spending period for PSG, although they did have quite a few outgoings, so it sort of balanced out overall. The major outgoing was Calimendo, the young French striker, to Stade Rennais, and of course Kera to West Ham. And that wraps up Ligue 1. Monaco didn't really have too much to say about them. They brought in Mohamed Kamara from Salzburg for 13 million, Minamino from Leipzig for 13, Brillin Bolo for about the same amount, and Malang Sarr on a loan, I think with an obligation to buy. Of course, they got rid of Tchouameni for about 70 million, so they're in the plus. So maybe later down the line they'll spend some of that money. We can move to the Bundesliga now, to the champions, Bayern München. They brought in Matthias de Ligt, of course, for £60 million from Juventus. Sadio Mane, 30 million from Liverpool. Matthias Tell, 17-year-old French striker from Stade Rennais for 20 million. Ryan Gravenberch from Ajax for 15. Mazraoui from Ajax on a free. They also let go, of course, to Lewandowski. Niazu, the French centre-back, went to Sevilla for £15 million. Dortmund brought in Sebastian Haller, who's unfortunately not having the best of times at the moment for testicular cancer, but he'll be back soon. Signed him for £30 million. And they brought in Karim Adeyemi from Salzburg for 30 million. Nico Schlotterbeck from Freiburg for 20. They brought in Haller's replacement, Modeste from Cologne for 5 million. Sahil Ozcan, quite interesting and one to watch out for, defensive midfielder, also brought in from Cologne, £5 million. Niklas Süle from Bayern Munich on a free. The major exits were Haaland and Akanji, both to Man City. Stefan Tigres went to Cologne, who used to be quite a highly touted striker. Not so much anymore. Bayer Leverkusen brought in Hudson Odoi on loan near the end of the deadline. Adam Hlozek joined from Sparta Prague. He's sort of deemed as a wonder-kid Czech player for about £12 million. Leipzig brought in Timo Werner for 20 million. David Raum, who's Germany's left-back, signed from Hoffenheim for about £25 million. They also loaned in Abou Diallo from PSG. I think it's a loan with an option to buy around 30 million. Their major exits were Tyler Adams, Hee Chan-wan to Wolves, and Brian Brobby to Ajax. I think that's the major signings in the window so far across the Bundesliga. I'm sure we've missed out a couple. Obviously, Ajax had kind of an interesting window at the end, with big question marks about whether Ocampos would join, but it looks like he did join in the end. Of course, they brought in Calvin Bassey for about £20 million or so from Rangers, who turned out to be the highest sale for a Scottish team. They brought in Florian Grillitsch as a defensive midfielder, just in case Edison Alvarez was going to leave, because it's touted to leave to join Chelsea, which didn't happen in the end. And they also brought in Lorenzo Luca from Pisa, a £1 million loan deal with an option to buy. Perhaps it's an obligation to buy for about £10 million. He's one for the future and 21 years old. One to watch out for. But I think that wraps up the majority of the major dealings that's happened across the clubs in Europe. I'm sure there'll be some that will trickle over the line over the next few hours. I've just seen Jan Vertonghen's joined Anderlecht on a free transfer. If that's to any interest of anybody. Yeah, so we'll probably keep you updated during the next podcast as well. If there's any transfers that we think of or that haven't happened yet, that will happen between now and then. We'll mention that on that podcast. But yeah, got anything else to mention, Joe?
No, that's about it. Yeah, before we finish, who outside the Premier League do you reckon's had the best window? Which team?
I would say, in terms of intake, PSG on paper. They brought in a lot of talent. Portuguese and Spanish seems to be the theme at the moment. Quite young players, and I'd say for the majority of them, quite reasonable fees. Soler looks like a very interesting player and signed for only about 15 million for Valencia. I know they're having a bit of a selling spree at Valencia, letting go of Guedes as well to Wolves. But yeah, so it'll definitely improve their chances of Champions League success. It won't guarantee it, of course, because it is PSG and they're internally cursed to not achieve in that competition. But yeah, I think they've had a good window generally. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I think PSG have. I also think Inter Milan and AC Milan have both strengthened, and Roma. That Italian league looks very spicy to me. They've all strengthened, and it's going to be, from what I've seen so far, it's going to be a very tight league. And yeah, maybe one of them can actually go on and do well in the Champions League as well. But only time will tell. Not going to ask you who you're going to reckon is going to win the Champions League, because I'm going to ask you that on Monday's pod. But has your opinion who's going to win Champions League changed after deadline day? So what it was yesterday, is it still the same as today, or has it changed based on the transfers that have happened for today?
Good question. It is exactly the same. And I'll tell you why on Monday. And you can tell me your predicted team as well. And maybe we'll put a bet on that.
Yes.
Because the last bet we put on went really well.
We'll tell you more about that on Monday's pod. But yeah, that wraps up the pods. As usual, best place to keep up to date with any of the latest gossip or latest articles is the pitchhider.com. And you can check out the latest article, the Big Six's transfer windows, and see if you agree with who we reckon has had the best transfer window out of the Big Six.
Worth a read.
The Instagram and Twitter were transfers, but we'll keep you up to date with rumours and news that is going to happen throughout the week, and we'll be reviewing the midweek games and also this weekend's games in the podcast that will be released on Monday at 8 p.m.
Perfect. Yeah. Yep. Well, thank you for joining me, Joe.
That's
say that this time.
yes, you can. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you in a few days.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. Peace out.